things you need to do before you even get started with your build. Hi, my name's Meg and this channel is all things home, DIY and renovations. So if you like that type of content, then please hit that subscribe button. But let's get into the video. Okay, so assuming that you already know that you are not going to be using permitted development in your build and you are looking to extend either out the back or up the loft, then this is for you. These are 5 things that you will have to expect to do before you even get started with your build. These came at a bit of a shock to us because it's taken us so long, so I thought I would share these 5 things with you so that you are not disappointed. Okay, so the first one is you need to appoint an architect. So, in order to get your plans put through the planning department, you're going to need an architect to draw up the plans for you. This is important because an architect knows exactly how to design a building and knows exactly sort of all the technicalities behind the build that us common folk may not know or understand. So, and as well, I think it's really important to have architect drawings because when you do actually come to the build, everybody's singing off the same hymn sheet and you can kind of visualize exactly what you want your space to look like. I would advise, if you do have something in mind already, then you can use any sort of online tool that's free or maybe a very low cost, something like Home Styler, to kind of show your architect what you're thinking so that they can go off and design it more tailored to what you actually want. However, if you are feeling a little bit spontaneous, then your architect can run wild and design something completely off the charts for you. Okay, so number 2, I kind of just touched upon this, but in order to get your build started, you will require planning permission. So like I said in the previous point, you will need planning permission for your build, and this is where your architect drawings are going to be super important. The architect drawings is the train track that will take your train to the station. So you will require the drawings to show planning department in your local area exactly what you're planning to do, how it will look on the outside, the elevations, upstairs, inside, downstairs, everything. So it is really important to get your architect drawings quite right because this will then be going onto the planning department. So in this instance, applying for planning can be relatively easy or it can be an absolute nightmare. I have found that if people are applying for just a single story extension, I've had a look online quite extensively while we were waiting for hours, that these seem to go through planning quite quickly with pretty much ease. Because they are not too complicated. However, our bungalow is in a bit of a weird plot. We're on the end of one street and the beginning of another. So we have houses going this way in our garden and then houses this way to the other side. So for us, planning was a little bit more difficult and it did take us 10 months before we were approved planning permission. So if yours is fairly straightforward, then you're looking between 8 to 16 weeks for your plans to go through. However, if it might be a little bit more complicated, we had no idea that ours was complicated before we actually started the process, then do prepare to be waiting. So again, we kind of knew we had to do this, but we didn't know how long it would take or how much it would be. So the third thing that you need to do before you even get the build started is instruct a structural engineer. So once you've had your plans approved, you will need to instruct a structural engineer. We have found that absolutely nobody will give us a quote without these structural plans. You might be thinking, what is a structural engineer and what are structural engineering drawings? Well, in order to build your build to built-in regulations, you need it to be built properly. So a structural engineer will calculate all the steel beams that are required, the ridge beams that are required, the floor joists, all these things that require a quantity surveyor to look at. So they will do the maths on how much things weigh, if a wall is load bearing, if it needs extra support, if it should be made from steel or should be made from wood. And the document is about 60 to whatever pages. Ours was 63 pages, but if you've got a party wall, so you're semi-detached, then this might be a lot longer and a bit more in depth because then you need a party wall agreement. But We're a detached bungalow, so we didn't need any of that, so ours was about 63 pages. So, how much do one of these costs and how long does it take? So they roughly take about 2 weeks, so if you've just had planning and you really want to get going, expect to wait about 2 weeks for this report, and that is saying that you've actually found a structural engineer that you want to go with and they're replying. Yes, because a lot of the ones we contact completely ghosted us. So the one that we did contact, it took him around a week and a half, I think, to get them to us, because he knew that we'd been waiting 295 days for planning, so thank you for that. And yeah, this actually cost us £1,125. So be prepared to pay that, as well as the planning fee, which is roughly around £290, I think it was. Also, I forgot to mention that the architect drawings, they can range from £1,000 up to anything, depending on how big your build is. So the structural engineer takes around 2 weeks, it's about £1,000. It's a big old document, and this is the turning point for us, because any builder's quotes that we'd had at this point were just estimates, without looking at the steel work. They were just estimates. Now that we've had the steel works, the steel calculations, we cannot believe the extent of this build. There are like 11 steel beams involved when we literally thought there would be 3. So this has taken our cost a lot higher, to the point that it's completely written out some builders that we just cannot afford them. This kind of brings me on to my next point. Once you've had your architect drawings, your plans, and your structural engineer report, number 4 is to get quotations from builders. Now, I would recommend, just from being stung in the past, get at least 3 to 6 quotes if you can. Some builders have literally come round, looked at the bungalow, said they'll quote, and then ghosted us completely. So we just had to like keep finding more builders. But yeah, the type of places I'd recommend getting builders from are people that you know that have used builders. I've tried to use websites like Rated People, Check a Trade, and you literally just get people who are like desperate for work that can start on like Monday, and I really don't think that's a good sign. I think a really good builder, or just your average builder, would have at least a little bit of waiting time because they'd be in work. So you've got to be really careful with these. I'm not saying that somebody who's got availability on Monday isn't a great builder, but you've got to be questioning why don't you have any work on at the moment. So you want to look at different things with your quotes. You want to look at the quote for a start, the cost, and you want to be making sure that you're comparing apples to apples, so all the builders' quotes are the same, so that you can compare and contrast which ones work for you better, because cheap doesn't always mean the best, but expensive doesn't always mean the best either, because sometimes some builders want to price you out of jobs. They might not like your job, or they might not want that one, or it's too long or too short. So always be wary with quotes that expensive isn't always the best, but you want to be looking at the cost, you want to be asking for a breakdown, you want to make sure they'll provide a contract. You also want to check their start date to make sure it fits with what you're doing, and you kind of just want to check out the company, how many people are working for them, do they seem like nice guys, what's your gut instinct, do you feel pressured by them, or do you feel comfortable in their presence? So just, yeah, that gut feeling I think is important, but you also want to back that up with a few different elements of just because usually it's a lot of money, so you want to make sure that you are making the right decision for you. Yeah, and then number 5 for me was pick your builder. So I kind of touched upon some of these points in the last point. So you kind of just want to make sure that your builder is providing a contract, and within that contract you want to make sure things that are outlined are their agreed price. You know, there might be some elements of the price that will change, but you want to make sure that's outlined in the contract. So now this, you know, sort of like bathroom suite, windows, radiators, internal doors, these costs are likely to change. However, the labour costs and material costs and the plasterer and the electrician and the plumber, this is all fixed cost. And you want to have that in the contract, and you also want to agree a start date, an end date, a price, and a breakdown as well, because some builders, they might ask for a deposit, As long as you're comfortable with giving a deposit, that's totally fine. And as well, the payment structure, you don't want to be paying more than 10% up front. I think that means that the company is struggling with cash flow, so you do want to just make sure that it's about 10%, or if you do have a certain thing on your build that requires a large upfront investment, then you know you can be sensible that way. But a lot of builders that we've been speaking to, it's kind of like 10% deposit, and then it's kind of like staggered payments throughout the weeks of the build, unless then unless the builder is paying out a lot of money for something like windows and doors, then yeah, you just want to be sensible. So maybe it's worth looking at like, right, week 3 is the week that we think we're going to be ordering the windows and the doors, so I will provide a larger sum that week compared to the week before when it was just demolition and skips. So yeah, you want to make sure that they've got a payment breakdown, you want to make sure that they'll give a contract and the price, start date, end date, payment breakdown is there, and you want to make sure that they are discussing building control. You don't want a builder who doesn't want to get building control involved. Building control needs to be instructed usually by your builder at the start of the build, and maybe in the middle. I'm not an expert on this because I haven't been through it yet, and definitely at the end to sign off your job. Appoint an architect, apply for planning permission, instruct a structural engineer, get quotes, and pick your builder. They're the kind of 5 points that I think you will have to do and expect before build even starts. Like I said, for us, we instructed an architect in January 2022. It's now the end of February 2023, and we're still on point for getting quotes from builders. So it is a lengthy process. It can be a lot quicker, it can even be a lot longer, and unfortunately for us, it has been quite a lengthy process, but we are getting there. I hope this video helps with people who haven't even got started yet, or even if you are at the point where you're at planning and you're not sure what's next. I hope this helps and helps manage your expectations as well, because I know my expectations were a little bit different to reality. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you are interested in home renovations and interiors, then be sure to give me a subscribe, because like I said, we're on point 4 at the moment. We are like on the cusp of starting our build. So if that interests you, then be sure to subscribe, because I've got a lot of content on its way. Thanks again for watching. If you like this video, drop a like as well. Let me know in the comments if you've got a build planned, and I will see you in the next video.